Let's start with one man whose idea of a Hawaiian vacation looks more like the set of a dystopian film: Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg's Hawaiian Fortress. You probably know Mark Zuckerberg as the guy who turned liking things online into a global addiction. But on the Hawaiian island of Kauai, he's been building something far more private and far more mysterious. Locals call it Zuck's Fortress. Others just call it what it looks like: a billionaire's apocalypse bunker. Over the past few years, Zuckerberg has poured more than $270 million into a sprawling 400-acre property that combines luxury secrecy and survivalism. Beneath the tropical surface lies a multi-level underground bunker built with blast-resistant materials. Radiation shielding, and air filtration systems. In plain English, this isn't a storm shelter. It's a lifeboat for civilization collapse. Workers who helped build the facility were reportedly forced to sign intense non-disclosure agreements and surrender their phones while on site. Some described military-grade steel plating and blast doors capable of withstanding nuclear-level impacts. Above ground, the compound doubles as a self-sustaining ecosystem, complete with livestock ranches, hydroponic farms, orchards, and aquaculture systems. The goal: food independence indefinitely. Zuckerberg's property even has its own water purification and power systems, including solar and geothermal generators. And here's where it gets eerie: construction ramped up dramatically after 2020. The same time, Facebook, now Meta, had access to internal data showing how misinformation and polarization were tearing societies apart. If anyone has seen how fast a civilization can fracture, it's the man who built the network fueling it. And it's not just a bunker anymore. Recent permits hint at an expansion: housing for families, clinics, schools, even recreational spaces, as if preparing to rebuild a mini-society underground. Engineers have also spotted communication systems that can operate without the internet. Think of it as a self-contained version of Meta that could keep running even if the world above shuts down. Now, skeptics say Zuckerberg's motives are all about sustainability and connecting with Hawaiian culture, which sounds great on a press release. But the scale, secrecy, and timing suggest something else entirely. Maybe he isn't just living sustainably, maybe he's preparing to survive sustainably. And if Zuckerberg's fortress is Earth's ultimate shelter, then Elon Musk's plan takes the idea of escaping civilization a little more literally straight into space. Elon Musk's Mars escape plan. Elon Musk loves to say he wants to make life multiplanetary. It sounds visionary, even noble. But what if that's just the polite way of saying Earth might not make it? While Musk's public message focuses on the dream of colonizing Mars for the good of humanity, insiders claim his real motivation is far more urgent: an evacuation plan for the elite. Behind the inspiring tweets and press conferences, there's a quiet race against the clock. And the deadline, according to leaks from within SpaceX, might be much sooner than anyone expects. Since 2020, Musk has accelerated his Mars timeline with an almost frantic intensity. Starship, SpaceX's crown jewel, isn't being built for comfort, it's built for capacity. Internal reports suggest the spacecraft's seating arrangements and life support systems are optimized for maximum human load during emergency scenarios, not leisurely exploration. In other words, it's less colonize Mars someday and more get out of here now. Even more intriguing, recent SpaceX recruitment drives have focused heavily on experts in radiation shielding, closed-loop life support, and underground construction, the same skill sets needed for surviving not just on Mars, but on a ruined Earth. A few former engineers have even hinted that Starship could serve as a dual-use survival vehicle, capable of reaching orbit or relocating VIPs to isolated safe zones on Earth. And if you connect the dots, Musk's other ventures start to look like puzzle pieces in one massive survival plan. Tesla develops off-grid power systems perfect for post-apocalyptic colonies. The Boring Company builds tunnels which double as potential underground shelters. Neuralink works on brain-machine interfaces, possibly to control systems without traditional infrastructure. Add in Musk's obsession with cryptocurrency, and you start to see a man preparing for a world where governments, currencies, and the internet itself could collapse. Then there's the SpaceX base in Boca Chica, Texas, officially a launch site, but now expanded to include housing factories and enough infrastructure to support a small city. Journalists visiting the site have described it as half rocket yard, half fortress. The big question is, what does Musk know? Could his backup plan for humanity be less about curiosity and more about survival? Because if Earth were truly on borrowed time, the man who spends his nights building rockets might be the only one already packing his bags. But if Mars is Musk's lifeboat, Peter Thiel has his own idea of safety deep underground in one of the most remote countries on Earth. Peter Thiel's New Zealand bunker network. If Elon Musk wants to escape upward, Peter Thiel prefers to dig deep. The PayPal co-founder, known for funding radical tech and political ideas, has quietly built a global network of underground fortresses with New Zealand as his crown jewel. At first glance, it sounds like a billionaire's real estate hobby: sprawling properties, remote farmland, and airstrips tucked between the rolling hills of the South Island. But dig deeper literally, and you'll find something far more calculated. Contractors who've worked on Thiel's sites describe bunker systems stretching 6 stories underground with hospitals, machine shops, and food production areas that could sustain hundreds for years. And the secrecy next level. Thiel's New Zealand citizenship, granted through obscure legal channels, allowed him to bypass normal residency rules. Locals were puzzled he barely spent time there. But to survivalists and security analysts, it made perfect sense. New Zealand is one of the safest places on the planet, politically stable, geographically isolated, and rich in clean water and farmland. In other words, the ideal place to wait out the end of the world. What makes Thiel's operation especially fascinating is its logistical sophistication. He reportedly maintains a private fleet of aircraft fuel caches and even pre-arranged shipping routes, a literal emergency bridge between continents. It's not just a bunker, it's a system, and he's not alone. Intelligence sources and local records indicate Thiel's network is part of a broader Silicon Valley exodus plan, with other billionaires quietly investing in nearby properties. Some reports even mention mutual defense pacts and resource-sharing agreements between them. Think of it as a tech survival alliance. Here's where the story turns philosophical. Thiel has long been obsessed with control over government, over technology, even over biology. His investments reveal a pattern: biotech firms researching genetic resilience, energy startups focusing on closed-loop systems, and AI companies modeling global catastrophe scenarios. In short, he's preparing not just to survive collapse, but to rebuild from the ashes on his terms. It's almost ironic, the same people who disrupted the world's systems are now preparing to live without them. And if Thiel's bunkers are designed to protect human bodies, Jeff Bezos is building something far more ambitious: a sanctuary for the species itself, orbiting far above Earth. Jeff Bezos' Space Ark project. Jeff Bezos doesn't just want to leave Earth, he wants to replace it. Through his company, Blue Origin, the Amazon founder has spent over $1 billion a year, developing what many believe isn't just a space tourism dream, but a full-blown off-world survival project. Officially, Blue Origin's goal is to build a road to space. But leaked patent filings and insider reports suggest something far grander: self-sustaining orbital habitats capable of housing thousands of people permanently. Imagine floating cities with artificial gravity hydroponic farms and sealed life support ecosystems. Sounds like science fiction until you see the blueprints. The plans show agriculture rings, manufacturing bays, and radiation-shielded living quarters. In theory, these orbital colonies could operate indefinitely without Earth's help, complete with food production, recycling systems, and energy drawn directly from the sun. NASA scientists have said the technology isn't impossible, just expensive and politically awkward to talk about. Bezos' timeline for this cosmic Noah's Ark has accelerated dramatically since 2020. Engineers call it a crash program. His stated goal: orbital habitation by the early 2030s. That urgency implies more than ambition, it implies fear. Even more revealing are the job listings. Blue Origin's recent hires include experts in long-term psychological stability, isolated community design, and space-based agriculture. These aren't the kind of roles you need for a 2-hour tourism flight. They're what you'd need to keep a small civilization alive indefinitely. And if you connect the dots, Bezos' Earth-based empire fits right in. Amazon's logistics network, perfect for rapid evacuation and supply movement. His massive farmland acquisitions, ideal for food system resilience. His control of major media, useful for narrative management during crises. Insiders even claim Bezos has coordinated with Musk on resource-sharing agreements. A "you take Mars, I'll take orbit" type of arrangement. If true, it means Earth's 2 most powerful space companies might not be competitors, but collaborators in building humanity's escape routes. And as Bezos reaches for the stars, Bill Gates is staying grounded, literally preparing to reseed the planet from scratch if everything else fails. Bill Gates' survival seed vault. When Bill Gates talks about the future, he usually sounds calm, rational, and data-driven. But behind his measured tone lies one of the most ambitious and unsettling survival projects ever funded by a private citizen: a global seed vault network designed to reboot civilization after collapse. Most people have heard of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, the icy storage facility buried deep within a Norwegian mountain. What few know is that Gates has quietly funded private versions of it across multiple continents, each one stocked with millions of seed samples sealed in climate-controlled bunkers that can run for decades without human intervention. Think of it as a genetic time capsule for Earth's food supply. But this isn't just about plants. Gates's foundation has invested heavily in synthetic biology, lab-grown meat, programmable microbes, and artificial photosynthesis. These technologies could recreate food systems in a world where farming becomes impossible due to nuclear winter pandemics or climate catastrophe. In other words, while others are preparing to survive, Gates is preparing to restart. Documents from agricultural research partners describe post-collapse restoration protocols, a phrase that sounds straight out of a disaster movie. These plans detail how to distribute seeds, rebuild supply chains, and even retrain survivors in regenerative farming. Some of these facilities are reportedly capable of producing medicine vaccines and protein sources without traditional factories or farms. It's a brilliant, terrifying kind of foresight. And it fits his portfolio from water purification projects to portable medical units. Every piece of Gates's global puzzle points to one thing: resilience through decentralization. He's also invested in land and water rights across the US, one of the largest private agricultural portfolios in the country. If you control food and water, you control survival. And when the global system cracks, those resources become priceless. Critics see this as technocratic hubris, one man trying to play Noah with the planet's gene pool. But there's another interpretation maybe. Gates isn't trying to rule the future, but to make sure there is one. And if Earth's survival vaults sound like a backup plan, Larry Ellison has taken that idea and scaled it into something far more ambitious: an entire self-sufficient island nation. Larry Ellison's Hawaiian Island Fortress. Larry Ellison didn't just buy a mansion, he bought 98% of an entire Hawaiian island. In 2012, the Oracle founder spent $300 million to acquire Lanai, a 140-square-mile paradise once known for its pineapple plantations. But over the last decade, that island has quietly transformed from a luxury resort destination into what some locals call Ellison's Ark, a self-sustaining micronation built to withstand global collapse. On paper, Ellison says his vision is sustainable living. But sustainability takes on a new meaning when your island has desalination plants, solar farms, and underground facilities. His infrastructure investments top $600 million, far more than what tourism alone would justify. There are power grids capable of supporting a city, agricultural systems that could feed thousands, and communication networks that can run completely off-grid. Local workers have hinted that new tunnels and underground chambers are being built under the guise of environmental restoration, but their true depth and purpose are classified. Some say they connect different parts of the island, creating a subterranean network of secure facilities, storage bunkers, medical centers, and emergency shelters stocked for long-term occupation. Above ground, Lanai is being reshaped into a functioning society. There are schools, clinics, farms, and training programs for residents, but the selection of who gets to live there is selective. Former employees report Ellison's team has been recruiting people with very specific skills: doctors, engineers, security experts, agricultural specialists, the building blocks of a civilization in miniature. Even the island's logistics are militarized. There are private airstrips, harbors for deep-water vessels, and radar systems monitoring the surrounding ocean. In an emergency, Lanai could close itself off completely, a sealed ecosystem floating in the Pacific. Ellison has described Lanai as a model for the future of humanity. Maybe that's true, but it also looks like a backup Earth ready to reboot if the real one crashes. And he's not the only one thinking globally. Because while Ellison builds a fortress in paradise, LinkedIn's co-founder Reid Hoffman has been quietly connecting something else: a global web of bunkers spanning multiple continents. Reid Hoffman's Global Bunker Network. Reid Hoffman, the man who helped millions of people connect on LinkedIn, is now focused on a very different kind of network, one designed not for careers, but for survival. Over the past decade, Hoffman has reportedly spent tens of millions of dollars constructing a series of interconnected bunkers scattered across the globe. From the Swiss Alps to rural New Zealand, and even discrete properties in Canada, his goal seems clear: create a distributed system of safe havens that can withstand everything from nuclear fallout to digital collapse. Each bunker is a mirror image of the others, like copies of the same survival template. They come fully equipped with air filtration systems, renewable energy, medical suites, and communication centers that can operate independently of the internet. Engineers who have seen blueprints describe them as miniature ecosystems capable of housing dozens of people for years at a time. What's fascinating is that this network isn't just personal. Hoffman appears to have designed it as a continuity plan for his entire business empire. His facilities reportedly include data archives, 3D printing workshops, and server nodes meant to preserve critical digital infrastructure during global outages. Think of it as LinkedIn, without the in. And it's not just about hardware. Hoffman is said to have established personnel training programs teaching key staff survival skills, basic medicine, and crisis logistics. These aren't weekend camping courses. They're full simulations designed to prepare elite teams to operate in isolation: engineers, medics, cooks, and even morale officers to maintain mental health during long confinement. But perhaps the most telling clue comes from his connections. Sources indicate Hoffman has formed mutual survival pacts with other tech billionaires, shared access resource pooling, and coordinated evacuation routes. If one region becomes uninhabitable, they can relocate within this secretive billionaire web. In a way, it's the world's most exclusive private insurance policy. It's poetic, really, the architect of social networking, now building a life networking system. But if Hoffman's strategy is about global coordination, Apple's Tim Cook has taken a different path, one that blurs the line between corporate defense and private military. Tim Cook's private army. Tim Cook may seem like the calmest CEO in Silicon Valley, measured private and relentlessly focused on Apple's polished image. But beneath that smooth exterior, reports suggest something startling. Apple has built one of the most advanced private defense forces in the corporate world. Officially, it's corporate security. Unofficially, it looks more like a small, well-funded army. Intelligence insiders describe Apple's force as composed of former special operations veterans, cybersecurity experts, and logistics specialists capable of defending not just data, but people and property during major societal disruptions. Their training goes far beyond typical executive protection. According to whistleblowers and leaked training documents, they rehearse urban combat siege survival and emergency evacuation drills. The team operates under protocols eerily similar to those of national defense agencies. They even conduct simulated attacks combining cyber warfare and physical infiltration. The kind of threats you'd expect in a nation-state conflict, not a tech campus. And it's not just about protecting headquarters. Apple's global manufacturing and data infrastructure has been quietly reinforced. Facilities now include armored perimeters, independent power systems, and off-grid communication networks that could keep Apple operational even if the global internet went dark. Some insiders describe this as Fortress Cupertino, Apple's logistics network. The supply web that delivers millions of devices worldwide has also been redesigned for crisis resilience. Redundant suppliers, decentralized production hubs, and backup data centers ensure the company could continue functioning even during massive geopolitical or economic collapse. Tim Cook himself reportedly maintains access to secure transport routes and safe houses equipped with encrypted communication systems. To most people, that sounds paranoid. But when you lead a company controlling the data of over 1 billion people, paranoia might just be protocol. There's also a moral twist here. Apple's internal continuity of civilization documents referenced by some former employees allegedly outline strategies for maintaining essential communication and information infrastructure in the absence of stable governance. It's as if Apple sees itself not just as a company, but as a potential custodian of order if institutions fail. And while Cook's army guards data and infrastructure, Jack Dorsey, the quiet philosopher of Silicon Valley, has been preparing for something more abstract, a world where governments, banks, and even the internet itself no longer exist. Jack Dorsey's digital fortress. Jack Dorsey has always seemed like the monk of Silicon Valley, minimalist, meditative, and a little mysterious. But behind his Zen demeanor lies one of the most radical apocalypse plans of all: the creation of a digital civilization that can survive even if the physical one collapses. Instead of bunkers or islands, Dorsey's weapon is code. Through his ventures in cryptocurrency, decentralized social media, and open-source infrastructure, he's been quietly building the technological scaffolding for a future without governments, banks, or centralized control. Take his obsession with Bitcoin. Most people think it's just about money. For Dorsey, it's about independence, a system that can't be shut down, censored, or inflated by collapsing economies. His companies Block and TBD have been developing peer-to-peer payment networks that work even without traditional internet access. Think digital trade that runs on satellites, mesh networks, or even radio signals. Then there's his work on decentralized social platforms like Blue Sky Social Media that lives everywhere and nowhere at once. These systems can keep information flowing during internet blackouts or authoritarian crackdowns. Combined with encrypted messaging and distributed storage, Dorsey's projects essentially create a shadow Internet one, immune to both political control and infrastructure failure. Recent patents and research partnerships hint at mesh connectivity hardware that allows smartphones to link directly, forming micro-networks independent of service providers. Imagine your phone talking directly to your neighbor's no cell tower, no ISP, no government filter. It's not just convenient. It's revolutionary in a world where communication could become the first casualty of chaos. And while others build bunkers, Dorsey builds backups, digital blueprints of civilization itself. He's invested in distributed data preservation, open-source archives designed to survive disasters by being copied and recopied across millions of devices. If the world's servers burned down, fragments of history, knowledge, and art could still exist scattered like digital seeds waiting to regrow the web. His critics call it paranoid techno-anarchism. But in an era when information is power, Dorsey's fortress isn't underground, it's everywhere. Still, one billionaire went even further, not just preparing to survive or preserve civilization, but to govern it. Enter Marc Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, who's been quietly building something extraordinary in Ireland that could one day operate as a private nation. Marc Benioff's Island Nation. While most tech billionaires are planning for survival, Salesforce CEO Marc Benioff seems to be planning for sovereignty. His ambition goes beyond bunkers or bunk beds in space. He's creating what looks suspiciously like a self-governing island state in the Pacific. Benioff has spent years buying up vast properties in Hawaii, quietly funding infrastructure that mirrors those of a small functioning nation. His projects include independent power grids, water treatment facilities, schools, hospitals, and even media outlets. Officially, it's framed as sustainable community development. But when you connect the dots, it looks more like a backup government. Locals have noticed something odd. While other billionaires build hidden bunkers, Benioff builds systems, political, economic, and social. He's funded local newspapers, invested in agricultural cooperatives, and developed communication networks that can function entirely off-grid. Even the schools and hospitals he supports are designed to operate autonomously, disconnected from state or federal infrastructure. Insiders refer to his project as territorial continuity planning. The phrase appears in leaked Salesforce internal documents describing strategies to maintain operations and governance in the absence of stable national institutions. In other words, if governments collapse, Benioff's island wouldn't just survive, it would function. He's also known for cultivating deep relationships with local leaders and lawmakers in Hawaii. Some political scientists interpret this as groundwork for de facto self-governance, creating a cooperative structure that could easily pivot into full autonomy under the right circumstances. Economically, Benioff's investments form a closed loop. Agriculture, manufacturing, and renewable energy all feeding into each other, sustaining a local population. Culturally, he's framing it as a return to balance, a blend of Hawaiian tradition and technological innovation. But beneath the idyllic surface, there's the unmistakable architecture of a private microstate. A place designed not just to survive collapse, but to outlast it. What's more unsettling is that Benioff isn't alone. He's reportedly been in contact with other Pacific-based tech magnates, including Larry Ellison, forming what some analysts describe as an archipelago alliance. Imagine multiple billionaire-owned islands connected through shared resources, technology, and defense, a chain of floating safe havens in a collapsing world. And that brings us to the end of this strange, interconnected story, where survivalism meets empire building and technology meets existential fear. So what do we make of this? 10 of the most powerful people on the planet: Zuckerberg, Musk, Thiel, Bezos, Gates, Ellison, Hoffman, Cook, Dorsey, and Benioff, all quietly building escape hatches, hidden kingdoms, or digital sanctuaries. Each of them seems to have chosen a different survival strategy. Zuckerberg is burrowing into the Earth. Musk is aiming for Mars. Thiel is going off-grid in New Zealand. Bezos is reaching orbit. Gates is banking on biology. Ellison has built a literal island civilization. Hoffman is weaving a global safety web. Cook has an army. Dorsey has a digital ark. And Benioff, he's building a nation. Different plans. One message: they all believe the future is fragile. These aren't wild-eyed preppers stocking canned food in basements. These are the architects of modern civilization. The same people shaping our digital lives, building parallel systems to replace the ones they no longer trust. The coordination is what's truly haunting. These projects overlap: renewable energy, off-grid communications, seed storage, AI-managed agriculture, private defense networks. It's as if, quietly, they've accepted a truth most of us can't, that the system we live in might not survive the century. But maybe there's another way to look at it. Throughout history, from ancient kings, building underground tombs, to Cold War governments, digging fallout shelters, humans have always prepared for the worst, and sometimes that fear is what saves us. Perhaps these billionaire bunkers aren't a rejection of civilization, but a mirror of our deepest instinct to survive, rebuild, and start again. And maybe the real question isn't what they know, but what we've ignored. Climate change, AI, risks, misinformation, economic fragility. All the things that seem distant until they're not. The billionaires' blueprints might be extreme, but they also reveal the growing cracks in our world, cracks that ordinary people can still help repair. Because if the richest minds on Earth are preparing for doomsday, maybe it's time the rest of us prepare to prevent it. Which of these survival plans do you think is the most plausible or the most disturbing? Let me know in the comments. And if you love exploring how science, technology, and human ambition collide in the strangest ways, subscribe, because the next mystery might just explain the future we're already living in.